What's up, everybody? Welcome into this edition of Warchant TV. I'm Aslan Hajavandi. He is Corey S. Clark, senior writer, lead writer for Warchant.com. If you're not a member of Warchant.com, you miss out on a lot of Corey's columns, I think, right? Corey, aren't those, don't you got to pay to play for those?
Yeah, we're not giving those away for free. Are you crazy?
Well, here's a good thing, though. You can get it's always a great value, Warchant.com. You can get usually 30 free days of access, but with spring football approaching, and we're going to talk about the defense going into spring, expectations, and what new defensive coordinator Adam Fuller has to work with. You can check out all of our coverage on Warchant.com right now. If you use the code FSU Spring 2020, you will get 6 bonus months added to your annual membership. So you get 18 months for the price of 12, and you'll get $50 of e-cards, gift cards that you can use on garnetandgold.com. They are the top provider of FSU apparel and merchandise. And again, all of Corey's great insight, Gene Williams, Michael Langston on the recruiting front, and then Irish O'Fell, obviously, our managing editor, who's been taking over our podcast this week. So he is everywhere. Right. All right, Corey, so spring football starts on Saturday. Crazy. Can't believe it's already here. We already did one of these features talking about what to look forward to for the spring football session with Gene Williams, our founder and administrator, talking about the offensive line. When we're talking about weaknesses, that's kind of at the top of the list. I don't know if the defense is 1A, 1B. Are they tied? Is there a gap between those two things? How would you assess the defense in terms of just how crucial and how much ground they have to make up to get this program back to where fans expect?
I mean, yeah, it's critical, man. It's crucial. It's more important in my opinion than even the offensive line, because it's a whole side of the field. It's 40 players. It's not just 5 guys you're trying to find that can be competent. You're trying to find 40 guys that can form into a competent 2 deep that isn't dreadful. And last year, everything about that defense was dreadful. From the start of the season with the debacle against Boise State to the end of the season and the debacle against Florida, and pretty much everything in between was awful. They finished, I think, 90th in total defense. They were 67th or 68th in scoring defense. They were 64th in rush defense, 58th in pass defense, 70th in third down. These are all guesstimates. I did just look it all up, but I can't remember off the top of my head. It's too many numbers. But nothing was lower than 50. Everything was in the bottom half of the country in defense. And when you're at Florida State and you have the talent that they have, and sorry, man, not everybody has a Corey Durden or a Marvin Wilson or an Asante Samuel or a Nasruddin. These are good football players. And for whatever reason, the last 2 years, they have not been put in a position to look like good football players, or to look like they have, but to look like an overarching good defense. And I was writing the story for the website about what you want to see in the spring. They had 7 5-star kids on that defense last year.
I did not.
7. So you had Stanford Samuels, Asante Samuel, Levante Taylor, Marvin Wilson. Ooh, and I just lost it. Jane Lars Woodby, Josh Kando, and somebody else that I'm forgetting. Now, in their defense, Woodby and Kando both got injured and got lost for the season. But Akeem Dent, I don't know if I said Akeem Dent. He might have been 7. So, but it's not like they were playing great as a defense with Kando and Jaden Lars Woodby in there. So it's almost like how many 5-star guys do you need to put together even an average defense, which this was not. So all that being said, I think there are some pieces there, man. I do think there's some pieces there for it to be at least a little bit above average, to take a step in the right direction.
Okay. Well, before we get to that good part of it, let's, I guess, maybe stay on, the worrisome parts of it. I mean, what would you say is a weakness of this defense, or weaknesses of the defense? And obviously, this is all couched with the fact that there's a new staff, so we don't know how they'll approach things, but just in terms of what you've seen, I guess maybe from what's on the roster and just how much you really can realistically change things in 1 year, what are the things that do give you pause still?
Well, there's the depth on the defensive line. They got bodies, but we don't know if they're any good. I think we all like the first 4 guys with Janaris and Marvin and Corey Durden and Robert Cooper. We like those guys, but there's not a lot of speed in that when you're talking about those front 4. Those are bulls. Those guys aren't dudes. They're not a lot of fast twitch guys out of the front 4, the starting 4. But you don't know what you have at all really as backups. Kando, I think, is a wild card if he can come back and be. But I mean, it's at this point, it's a wild card. You can't expect Kendo to come in and have like an all-conference type season. So I think that's a weakness. I think the biggest weakness, and it's a cliche, but it's been around here for 6-7 years now, is the linebacking core. Emmett Rice had some nice moments at the end of last year. I think Amari Gaynor has the ability to be a pretty good player. Some of these new guys, whether it's McCray, whether it's Steven Dix Jr., whether it's Deloach, somebody has to come in and make some plays, man, and change the way this segment has played over the last 5 or 6 years, because it has been not good, to be kind, at linebacker. And I think that's Jaden Large would be another guy that maybe, assuming he'll play linebacker, can add to that when he's healthy. But I think linebacker is the biggest weakness, because there's just no – are there NFL guys there? We know the defensive line has at least a couple. Are there any NFL guys in the linebacking core? Are there any special guys? Are there any all-conference type players? We don't know. We know that they were ranked pretty high coming out of high school, a lot of these dudes. But is that going to translate to the college level? Are these guys going to take another step? Can Emmett Rice stay on the field? Those are all big questions heading into the spring.
Well, then, I guess on the flip side of that, what are some of the positives or the strengths that Adam Fuller and that defensive staff has to work with going into spring?
I think you start the spring. I'm glad you asked me that, Aslan. Great question. Great question. I think they have 3 of the best defensive players in the conference, in Marvin, Asante Samuel, and Nasruddin. Those 3 guys are very, very good players. Now, Nasruddin obviously is coming off an injury. Will he be ready for the spring?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Probably not, right? But you know what you have in him. It'd be nice to see Fuller get a chance to kind of figure out what he wants to do with him, because he's such a rare combination of size and speed. But he's a dude that attacks the ball. So you got him. I think Asante Samuel is one of the best cornerbacks in the country. And then Marvin Wilson will be one of the best defensive linemen in the country. So that's nice. That's a good mix. I do think that overall defense, I think Akeem Dent, man, is going to be a good player if he can get some confidence and hang on to a ball. Like, he should be out there every day for 45 minutes just at the jugs gun, just catching balls here. Just get some confidence so you can go up. He could have had 6 or 7 interceptions last year, legitimately, and I don't know that he had any. Probably led the world in pass breakups, though. So I do think there's some talent in that back end. I am really excited about Travis Jay to see what they do with him, how they use him. He is a rare combination of size and speed. Maybe he's another Nasruddin type guy. Maybe he's a corner. We'll see. But there's some serious talent. Marvin and Corey Durden give you one of the best defensive tackle combos in the country, and then Asante Samuel is one of the best corners. And you got a good safety. A lot of question marks after that, though.
We've talked about on the podcast just about how, momentum from bowl games is really fleeting and really doesn't even register, barely, if any. But defensively, that unit that was the best they'd looked in quite some time. And obviously Arizona State was without Brandon Ayuk and their number 1 running back as well. So I guess we kind of have to, Benjamin, I think we have to obviously keep that in mind. But was there anything that you saw from that game, or maybe not that game in particular, but is there any sense of maybe momentum building, you think, with this defensive unit after the way they finished their year?
I don't know. Probably not. I did like the way they played. It was the most physical they'd been all season. Maybe having the month off helped. I did think they flew around and attacked ball carriers and struck them, which was good to see. But, yeah, man, Arizona State was a bad offense anyway. And then they lost their 2 best playmakers going into that game. So you have to judge it like that. But I did think there were times when Durden was unblockable. That was good to see, because you already know what you got in 21. I thought Durden at times last year was really good, and other times he kind of just didn't make any plays at all. Wasn't even noticeable, getting a push in the middle of the line. So if he can take a next step off that game, I think that's a big deal. But overall, bowl games in particular, I don't know how much you take away from them, but especially that one with their 2 best players sitting out against a bad offense. I don't know if that portends to greatness coming up in 2020. But again, it was good to see that at least they seem to have a different mindset, man. That Florida game, they just sat there and just y'all do whatever you want. Just we're going to try not to get hurt. And then to come out a month later, almost like they were it was an audition for the new coaching staff, for them to play that hard. Maybe moving forward, that's what these guys will be able to engender from all these guys, is to be able to play hard, to elicit that kind of aggression would be really good to see from this new coaching staff.
And I don't know if we've really even talked about it enough, but just the fact that they started the season wanting to be 3 down linemen of a defense, and they pivoted gradually throughout the season, and it never obviously worked out. But to your point, when you had a whole month off, they had a whole month off to bowl prep. They came out 4-man front and just kind of returned to a vanilla defense, but they looked the most sort of dynamic they had the entire season. So that seems to be a little bit encouraging. Last question before we go out here, Corey. You mentioned Josh Kando as your X factor. I guess Travis Jay's your sleeper. Is there anybody else that you think is maybe under the radar? And we also asked El Jefe, El Padrino, the boss of all bosses, Gene Williams, this. He projected the entire starting 5 on the offensive line. Do you want to make a stab at maybe the starting front 7 for spring, or do you want to look even more ahead to Atlanta? I know that was a lot of stuff, but handle whichever one you want.
That's a tough one, man. I don't know if I'll make a stab at the starting 11. I think the starting defensive line is what I already said. I think Emmett Rice will be a starter at linebacker. I think Amari Gaynor will be a starter at linebacker. It's that other spot. Is that going to be Leonard Warner? Is that going to be one of the new guys? Is that going to be Deloach? They need a kind of a physical presence at linebacker. And then the secondary, you know for sure that Najmuddin and Samuel, but you don't know what Woodby's health is. You don't know what Kando's health is. If Kando is 100% healthy, maybe he's one of the starters on the defensive line. So it's hard to kind of project what it'll be. What is that, 6 months from now? But I do project that it'll be better. You know what I mean? Look, folks, I'm an optimist by heart. It almost literally can't be any worse than it was last year. So there's your hope. I have no idea if Adam Fuller is a good DC. I thought Harlan Barnett was going to be a good DC here. He wasn't. So that's how much my opinion's worth when it comes to before we see it on the field. But going back real quick, yeah, man, I think when we and I wrote about it a little bit in the story is that, when you start a season and go all through August with a 3-4 with guys that weren't recruited to play. Remember we had Travis Johnson on the podcast and he's like, man, that's a whole different deal. When you're going from 3-4 to a 4 or a 4-3 to a 3-4, none of those guys were recruited to play that. So you're trying to fit square pegs into round holes anyway. And the guy that's coaching it doesn't know how to coach it. He's never done it before. So it was a lot of it was just chaos. It was chaotic. In those first 2 games, Boise State and then the Louisiana Monroe game were just absolute debacles. After that, they at least got to be somewhat competent, but never great, never even good. They were just mediocre. But it wasn't a debacle like it was the first 2 games. And it's like, this year there will be a clear vision. And I do think that Norvell is going to let Adam Fuller do what Adam Fuller does. And he's not going to tell him, nope, you got to go to a 2-6 or whatever he might want to do. He's going to let Adam Fuller just call the shots. And I think if there's a clear vision and there's a clear message and there's one guy at the top that's telling them, this is what I want, this is how I play defense, this is how I coach defense, that can only help because they haven't had that the last 2 years.
You're always so good at, evading questions when I try to put you on the hot seat, but I didn't do a good job of asking you one. So here's the last one. Who do you think will make a bigger splash for the defense? Do you think it'll be somebody that was on the roster in 2019, or do you think maybe Cornell Jones, the linebacker from Purdue, or Jarrett Jackson, the transfer from Louisville, will make a bigger impact for Florida State in 2020? Can't count Travis Jay.
Oh, man, why? Number one, I didn't call him a sleeper. I said he's going to be the wild card. I don't know what Josh Kando is because we just don't – maybe I called Kando a wild card too. I didn't call him an X factor because we don't know what we're getting out of that guy. You just have no idea. He could be a 9-sack guy or he could be a dude that plays 11 snaps a game. We just don't know. But no, I'm not – you don't get to dictate who I get to say is going to have a bigger impact. It'll be interesting with the 2 transfers, though. I think that does help. Those are bodies. Those are bodies that have played at this level, that have been around this. I think you can maybe count on them more going into August than you can the freshmen. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Travis Jay. I also want to throw Akeem Dent in there, man. I know he played a ton last year. He never really started at corner, maybe one game, but he came in a lot in nickel. And I wouldn't say he got abused, but he gave up a lot of touchdowns where he's right there. And it's such a small step from being right there and giving up a play to being right there and making a play. And a lot of it is, some of it's technique. You got to hope he's going to be coached better. But also a lot of it is confidence. And you just hope that he gets some confidence early because I do think that guy is a 5-star talent. I think he's a potential NFL player. He's just got to go make plays.
Check out warchant.com, folks. A lot more about spring football over there. If you're not a member, use that promo code FSU Spring 2020. You get 18 months of access for the price of 12, and you get a $50 e-card, which is just a gift card you use online at Garnet and Gold. They got everything you could possibly ever imagine if you're a Florida State fan to purchase. He's Corey Clark. I'm Azan Javani. Thanks for watching this edition of Warchant TV.